Oh, I am lifted up. Thank you, choir. I hope you feel the same altitude I feel at the end of that I didn't have going in. We are a fortunate people. Fortunate people indeed. And I got to remind all of you that when I first started out, I had fewer people in church on Sunday than you number now. Now, if you all end up joining the choir and you all have robes on, that's okay too. Do you feel lifted up? Of course you do. And every week I come into this pulpit not knowing whether or not I will have a word that will lift you up. And so I ask for your help, for your confidence, for your thoughts, for your prayers, that you extend a little forgiveness my way. And thankfully a lot of sins just got forgiven. We are enriched. And I ask ever that these words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be found true in thy sight, thou who art my rock and my redeemer, as we once again look to our mission to free more minds and grow more souls and make the world even better than we found it. Now, something you may not know is that we clergy, when we go to clergy classes and sit in front of our professors, we're taught there's a difference between the sermon and the homily. They're not the same. The sermon is the proclaimed word, sometimes with the extended finger pointed right at you. Woe unto you, or come thou. It is the proclamation of the thing that needs to be heard to those who presumably have not heard it. The homily is a family thing for all of us who are part of the community, asking, how do I do this one more week? And the trouble is, on Sunday, I've got to do both. There's Gwen back there. I said hi to her. This is her first day, so I should be proclaiming the truth to you. But I also have to preach the homily to you, my loves. How do we speak both intimately and intensively? I don't know. I'm not really good at that part. I want to talk about money today, about giving. It needs to be done. Frequently there's a sermon preached in a variety of locations in which the preacher calls the sermon before the annual appeal the sermon on the amount. Ha, ha, ha. The day I preach with that title is the day before I'm leaving you. But the reality is we have to talk about not only the high and the lofty and the grand, but the particular and the human and the actual. And I'm here supposedly to exhort and implore and otherwise bring forth from you unexpected generosity. I wish I had the experience that Ben Franklin had when experiencing the early American evangelist named George Whitefield. Franklin wrote about it in his diary. You will love this. I happened to attend one of his sermons, he wrote, in the course of which I perceived he intended to finish with a collection. And I silently resolved he should get nothing from me. I had in my pocket a handful of copper pennies, 3 or 4 silver dollars, and even a few pistoles of Spanish gold. As he began, I proceeded to soften and concluded to give the pennies. Another stroke of his oratory made me ashamed of that and determined me to give the silver. And he finished so admirably, I emptied my pocket wholly into the collector's dish, gold, silver, and all. I can't do that. That is not my gift. I am zealous in my faith. I think that it is worth every penny, dollar you put into it. But I've never been able to extract a single bit of lucre from anyone in a sermon or in person. In our early worship, I said, I'm admiring of those who with dulcet tones and imploring eyes can stand in front of you and the money drops out of your pants, falls out of your purses. When I call on someone, what I get are no, no, and no. So I did some studying, and I learned that generosity often comes in three forms. And here I'm speaking to my homiletic comrades, the members of the community at large. I'll get to the sermon in a moment. Apparently, generosity for some is motivated by duty. Those who grew up in my generation and earlier were accustomed to being told, here's what we need, here's what you give, and we did that. So for you who think like that, here's some information. The current cost of running this church the way it is today is $2,100 per pledging household. The average pledge is $1,750. Where does the rest come from? Good luck. Pledging households, though, I said pledging households. Total households are twice as many as pledging households. Half give nothing at all. Now, of course, some households have several members, some have only one. So we could divide it up, shall we say, between everyone in the church, member, friend, adult, child. And if we divided the cost between everyone equally, which we can't, that would amount to $657.10 per person. None of those numbers, though, will tell you what you should give. Now, there are some of you, on the other hand, for whom these numbers are of no account, but you care very much to be part of the community and be with your friends and hold up your end of the moral bargain. What their friends do matters. It's the reason other groups like symphonies and art museums publish books that show supporters and patrons and benefactors, all of which are a little richer than the last. You know what I mean? And you read them, don't you? You go to the concert and you look at the list, don't you? You say, oh, I know her. I know him. And you look for yourself if you gave money and you wonder, should I be in a different group? There's nothing wrong with this. We want to be amongst those we know. But this is a democratic place, and we don't want to segregate those who are more generous or have more to give from those who have less to give. I was about to say generous, and that's not true. Because if we had someone who was a billionaire who gave us $50,000, that would be a lot, but it would not be at all generous. And if we had someone who was unemployed who gave us $100 a year, that would be generous in ways we cannot comprehend. So we should not use the word generous about how much in dollars, but how much in effort. But here in this democratic place, we don't want to have first class and second class and third class members. I should point out, I know of at least one church I read about years ago that insisted that all the members bring their 1040 forms to church. Hey, in order to talk about what they should give. Now, I can say that we do have households that give $15, and we have a household that gives $15,000, and that half give nothing. For those who want to be good teammates, to be part of the group, perhaps we should think again about whether or not we should be so quiet about our personal support, because silence is assent to the status quo. And finally, there are those who give to the vision, the future. Capital campaigns are all about this. The new building, you can see the tower going up, or the new organ, you can hear the music coming out of it. Some palpable accomplishment is very powerful. Some years ago, I asked you, the congregation, in the light of the Kalamazoo promise, whether we could do that for at least one person at the community college, and the money arrived within a month. When we know what the money does, when we believe in it, we're ready. But I can't do that to you every year. That's a bait and switch that everyone would be smart to. And besides, who is going to say, let's raise money for the health insurance? No sex appeal at all. You can't look at it. You can't put your name on a plaque on it. So that's a limited way to do things. See, I told you it was not my gift to get money out of you. You're already thinking of at least 3 reasons why you shouldn't give any more money. And I cannot find a way to convince more people to give, and those who do to give more, and I cannot sustain this place indefinitely on what we have. So what I can do, and this is where it becomes a sermon, is tell you about me, why I give what I give, and let you decide what matters to you. Do you remember a movie a few years ago called Master and Commander? British Navy sailing ships, Russell Crowe hanging from the rigging with a spyglass, very romantic. I grew up on the East Coast where sailing ships were everywhere. My dad was in the Coast Guard, and my favorite picture of him is when he's 19 years old in his sailor duds, standing on the deck of a sailing ship with a sextant in his hand. Mercy, he looked great. So I love this movie, and I went and read the books from which it came, and in the process of reading all these books about the Napoleonic era and Lord Nelson, I learned how deckhands are trained in the British Navy. The chief petty officer would take the new recruits is the wrong word, the new conscripts, they were almost always taken off of other ships against their will, and said, when you climb up in the rigging, lad, 1 hand for the ship, 1 hand for yourself. This is an insight into economics. Every kind of work we do is not just for ourselves or for someone else. It's always a combination of the two. Whatever our labors, they both serve ourselves on one hand and the ship on the other. It may seem much simpler. I do my job, I get paid, the transaction is complete. But upon reflection, we know that all of our work does work beyond what we notice. For example, we have a wonderful self-employed truck driver in this congregation. I've threatened to go on a run with him, but so far we haven't connected. He describes his work, and I realize that while he gets paid for being a truck driver, his labor gets the apples from the orchard across the lake on the ferry to the distributor in Wisconsin. At every stage, more value is added to the community. The farmer gets paid. The ferry operator gets paid. He gets paid. Everybody takes part in the transaction. He does not work for himself alone, but for others as well.